I'd like to introduce first myself, I'm Alexa Fernandez. I work with BBVA, Spanish bank, and I do partnerships with FinTech companies. Our first panelist or speaker is Jaidev Janardana from Zopa. He is the CEO. And we also have Knox, who is the CEO and founder of Tandem. So to get things started, I have a really important question specifically for Ricky.
Oh, great.
So what color is your underwear?
Rainbow.
Excellent.
My rainbow undies on today, no.
Do you want to answer that one?
I'll skip.
All right, so the title of the panel is Disrupting Yourself. From my perspective, I see two companies, one that is fairly established, Zopa, which means they've been around for a while, they have a really substantial, successful business, and yet they're established. So they're in danger of being disrupted themselves. And what have they done? They've decided to get a banking license. From the other side, you have Tandem, which is a relatively young company, new, it's starting. They are applying to be a bank, have applied. Didn't necessarily work out. They've had to take a different direction. So that's almost like a slight pivot. But this is my point of view from the outside. Let's hear it directly from you guys and tell us, why do you think you're here? Why do you think they asked you to be on the panel called Disrupting Yourself? So tell us your story, and let's start with Jaidev.
Perfect, thank you. So as you mentioned, we've been around for what seems like a while, 12 years. We were the inventor of the peer-to-peer business. And I joined in 2014. And as a business, we're doing really, really well. We've quadrupled revenues, loan volumes, achieved profitability in the last 3 years. And thus, from looking at the business, it seemed that we were operating from a position of strength. But one thing we do every year is to really look at what the customer wants. What are the customer needs that are not being met, and try to work backwards from there. And the things that we felt as we looked at, both talked to our customers and looked at the market, is some of the markets where the customers are least well served are things like forms of revolving credit, be that overdraft, credit cards, auto finance, another business where I think customers are definitely getting a far worse deal. Now we take great pride in the fact that we have made the world of installment loans for customers a lot better, a lot more competitive, a lot more easy, and we've had a lot of competitors follow some of the things we have done, be that soft checks, a fully online journey. But these two markets just still seem like they are back in the 20th century, and we thought, we have the right skills to actually go after these. But what do we need? And we think a balance sheet model, a banking model, is far better to do something like credit cards, for example, because it's not certain when you're going to get the money back. It's not certain whether you're going to get interest. So to make a peer-to-peer model work there is not right. But what the customer wants is probably a better credit card, is a better revolving credit facility. And for us, that meant going into the banking license. And I think one thing that was important for us is that we brought the same ethos of customer centricity. We've got today a borrower NPS score of 85. That's better than any tech company that you can call out, leave alone financial services, right? We've got more our lenders want our product so much for this entire year. We've been operating a waiting list for people to come in and lend with Zopa. We've got about 20,000 potential customers waiting for the opportunity to lend for us. So, and that has been built because we have built a business which is completely centered around the customer, a business model and products where we win when the customer wins, and we want to take the same ethos into banking and challenge the incumbents on a wider field. And that's where we chose to, in a way, being the inventor of peer-to-peer, chose to disrupt ourselves and go into banking.
I swear you copied my business plan. I'm sure that was my chat with the FCA. So it's interesting because when I first got asked to do this panel, I actually said, Nah, I don't really like pivot. I'm not sure it's pivot. So Tandem is actually pursuing the same strategy it was pursuing before buying Harrods Bank, but I have to say they're kind of right, and I get the point, which is, when I set out to build Tandem Bank, did I think, I know what, I need some Harrods branded gold bullion and a little bit of that Al-Fayed spice to rub off on me? That was not in my business plan. So I do get the pivot perspective. Alexa referred to it earlier. We actually had a launch funding round signed up with House of Fraser. Yeah, I know. What is it with me and retailers? It's like a weird thing. But actually, that was an interesting lesson for me. House of Fraser is owned by some Chinese investors, and turned out that despite signed documents, etc., the cash didn't arrive. So we had probably one of my worst marches to date, and consequently, actually, we're going out raising finance, and the opportunity to purchase Harrods came along, and actually turned out to be a much more exciting thing than I thought it was. I have to confess, and indeed, we were in the news today. Very excited under the title "Harrods Bank Closes." We've actually we've thanks guys. No, we've actually just closed the bullion business, the foreign exchange. Sorry for the FCMP. I don't control the business yet. We are currently in change control process. Harrods decided itself to close its branch, its bullion business, and its FX business. A world first here. No, yeah, I'll have a chat with you afterwards. World first do their FX for them. But yeah, so that is happening. However, underlying that is a direct mortgages on one side and savings accounts on the other business, which is quite successful, has grown very nicely, makes good margins, has a big balance sheet, all of which I'm not allowed to disclose until the deal closes. But actually, from a Tandem perspective, it gives us an opportunity to leapfrog some of the other players in terms of revenue, some of them in terms of balance sheet. And land with more of an impact, as well as build a more sustainable business. So exciting opportunity for us, and now I'm the proud owner of a series of Harrods branded gold bars.
So then this is actually super relevant panel for you because you've acquired a business.
Yeah.
What is the existing employee base? How long have they been around? Now you have to go and disrupt them, don't you?
Yeah, there's a little bit of disruption going on, inevitably. Actually, interestingly, the employee base at Harrods turned over almost entirely in the last 3 years. So Harrods has just done its own little turnaround of sorts, and a lot of the balance sheet that it has right now didn't have certainly didn't have under Al-Fayed, who had a very interesting portfolio I'd never seen a £10 million unsecured personal loan before, but there was one in there somewhere, as well as Nick Faldo's current account, which seems was dormant, but I haven't heard from Nick Faldo in a while.
So the startup myth is that we're fast, we can pivot. In your case, you can do that, but underneath there's going to be this whole other foundation. And in Zopa, you guys prided yourself, like you said, on being customer focused and the centricity, but sometimes you hear about, once a company gets to a certain stage, a certain size, then it's got different goals and different targets because they have an established business. You've been around enough to where it is a bit difficult to change as well. So how do you tackle it from Zopa? Like, what are the things you're looking at when you're creating a new business in order to help the current one adapt?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we have tried to stay true to in that spirit of customer centricity is to organize ourselves somewhat differently to retain the agility of a startup. So one of the, it's something that we copied to start from Spotify, but I've kind of, I would say, bastardized it for our own, in our own version, which is the concept of a tribe. And what the tribe does is, in our world is that it's responsible for a particular customer problem or a customer journey. For example, if you're applying for a loan, a tribe manages that. And in that tribe is all the resources they need to solve the problem. That means, they have the relationship with, say, Money Supermarket. They have the front-end designers. They have the Python developers who do the machine learning for pricing and risk. They have the back-end developers who will actually manage the database. They have the copywriters, and they have dedicated compliance and legal experts. So as a tribe, they are fairly autonomous, and they can run at full speed to actually solve whatever their customer problems are. And by organizing ourselves into these little tribes, which are each focused on a particular customer problem, what we get is that agility of that startup at a very good pace. It does make my head of product, head of marketing, head of technology's job a lot harder because they have to run around each tribe, find out what they're doing, and make sure that it all kind of adds up to a coherent whole. But for us, it retains the agility of that startup. So when we decided that we were going to launch a bank, the idea was to say, okay, that means 3 more tribes or 4 more tribes, right? And it's about finding some existing talent and moving them along there, but also recruiting new people, so such that we can maintain that agility. But the second and more important thing for us to do was to actually talk to our to employees and make for them to understand why we were doing this and why this was actually going to make the existing business a lot better and the existing customers, the offering to the customer a lot better. I think making that investment actually meant that the tribes were very supportive in actually giving us the people we needed to seed the bank team, such that we had the same culture, but and a lot of the and still a common feeling of a common goal. So that's what we had to do.
So then that poses another question. You talked about investment. You're going to have to invest in innovation, disruption, whatever we call it. Yeah. If you're a big established corporation, you have lots of money to pay for people like me. What do you do in the case of yourselves? How do you fund that new innovation or disruption?
It does help that while we do not have as much money as BBVA, that we are a profitable business, so it generates its own money. But I think we also have been able to create a reasonably compelling story in terms of both what we have done and the track record that we have done. I think what we have is, I believe, a very unique company. It's a financial services company that its customers love and trust. It's growing rapidly, but profitably, and it has never, in its history, sacrificed discipline of risk management for growth. That's a unique and compelling story, and thus we were able to get the requisite investment in terms of money from both existing and new investors to actually fund that story. But it does help to have a profitable business on the side, because that does mean that you're not burning cash every day.
So, Ricky, from the experience that you've gone through, what is a most important thing you've learned in going through this? It's not that you've pivoted or however we define it. Tell me something that you really wish other people could learn from.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think if I was to and one of the things, and actually I was debating it with our chairman earlier this week, but it's actually probably a good learning for many entrepreneurs, although it just came up with the stuff in my head, so tell me if you think it's shit, which is take the meeting. A lot of startup founders think they're really jolly important, and they're very, very, very busy, and they say, I'm really sorry, I can't afford to do those non-critical meetings because I owe it to my team to concentrate on the business. And the Harrods deal came out of a completely random call to our call center and a very random meeting. I think, never be too busy to be open to opportunity. You can be very, very, very focused on doing something, and I suppose it comes back to the title of this panel a little bit, but don't lose sight of the lateral opportunity, and make sure that you're open and receptive to it, no matter how busy you are, hard charging at your one goal. Because when you look back in 5 years' time, you'll probably find that one goal you're hard charging at was utterly irrelevant, and in fact you're 3 goals further on. And build a great business, but just not exactly the business that you planned to build, early on. And actually, Zopa. I've sort of been involved adjacently with Zopa for since it started. But Zopa had an awful lot of pivots along the way to what is a very, very successful business now, and has stuck by its core customer principles. But a lot of the other stuff, there were various bits where it was, you trying to grow a marketplace with 2 sides. It got jammed up on one side than the other side, and now, but what you've got, and obviously, I think the peer-to-peer market in general has solved that problem by bringing in liquidity providers on one side of the market, which then allows you to actually grow. But that was a massive pivot. A lot of the peer-to-peer is hedge to peer, it's bank to peer, it's everything but peer-to-peer for many companies, and companies like TransferWise were never peer-to-peer. They did it all through. Steve Lemon was up here earlier, wasn't he? They basically did it all through Steve at Currency Cloud for the first 3 years, but peer-to-peer was good marketing. I think there's a lot. You've got to be open to opportunity.
So then, Jaidev, how do you do it to ensure that you have time for those meetings?
Yeah.
And also, an interesting thing came up, which is you've got to open yourself up to setting those meetings.
Doesn't mean all of them.
Not all of them, but exactly. So how do you filter through them? But I think there's also, especially in the FinTech world, there's a lot of potential within your own customer base, because your own customers are sophisticated users for the most part. So how do you prioritize the meetings, and then looking at your customer base, since you're so customer focused, have you found that that's actually led to some opportunities for your company?
It's not just about meetings. Meetings is one of the things, but I think it's also about understanding what are the different trends that are going around. So one of the things we try to be disciplined about is really looking at consumer trends, and we do that typically in a year, once every year, but sometimes more often, which is saying what is happening in the rest of the world. And one of the things that one of our values is about strive to be the best, and the way we define best is really be curious, find out what are the great things that are happening, and figure out how that might impact your business, even if it doesn't seem very direct. So that's a value that we have in the business. It's a process we run on a regular basis, which is really let's look out and see what is happening that can either have an impact on the business or there can be an opportunity for the business, and let's just be disciplined about actually going through that on a regular basis. That's, I think, one part of the thing. The second part is I think having a balanced team helps. I'm lucky to look at my team and say there are a lot of people who are great operators and who take their joy from coming into the office and building great business. And there were other people in the team who really revel in meeting people, going to conferences, finding out what's happening, and a lot of those people always find time for meetings. So I feel I'm in a lucky position that I don't always have to do it myself. At times I can rely on some of the team to take that additional meeting. And if you can find the right balance within your leadership team, then it does make life a little bit easier for you.
I think I have to take a question. I don't know if you want to tackle this one. You can tell us whether or not. This is for Ricky. What are the next steps to taking control of Harrods, and what does he plan to do with the 155 million pounds of loans with the maturity over 5 years showing in the filed accounts?
So I'm not allowed to disclose very much. The loans were and are primarily mortgages. We're going to continue to serve the customer base of Harrods, on our platform, not on their platform. And so, if there are any Harrods customers in the room, you can look forward to a way better mobile experience, slightly less responsive call center, and no opportunity to go into Harrods and do some shopping and pop into your branch, although it turns out none of them popped into the branch anyway. No, I mean, I think we need to get permission from the regulator to close the deal. We need to integrate the businesses, and we need to go out there and build a fantastic, customer-driven digital bank. So, I mean, that's the plan. 1, 2, 3, just like that.
Easy. So, Jaidev, what are some of the things, or one thing that hasn't worked in your journey of trying to disrupt yourself?
We're still early in the process, so I'm sure there is a lot that that cannot work, and we are going to focus on managing the risk. But I mean, I feel that, touch wood, when I look back at what we had set out for this year, we seem to be on track right now in achieving that. But so nothing yet that I can claim is things are not quite working.
But, not even internally in terms of a certain process or the way you approached it?
So yeah, I mean, I think there was one thing which, when we had started off, which didn't quite go to plan, which was our technology platform. So I remember when I started the process, I said, I want to be quick. We want to get this out in the market very soon. So what I wanted to make sure is that we do not reinvent the wheel. Deposits, credit cards have been solved before. I just want to go find the best solution out there and put it in house. And of course, technology people want to build. So I told my CTO, over my dead body, are you going to build any of this stuff? And I'm not yet dead, but he is building everything. And that's part of the, as we kind of have gone out and tried to find solutions, we got these very big, bulky, rigid systems that actually are reliable, but probably do not work for either our ethos in terms of wanting to be agile, and do not work for the scale that we have, and would have created a reasonable amount of economic cost, which would have then impacted customer pricing that we could offer, or a lot of new and nimble players, but who hadn't thought through the 17 or 18 edge cases that happen when you have hundreds of thousands of customers. And the advantage of, or the disadvantage of us having had business for a long enough time is that we could think of all these weird things that customers end up doing, or things that have happened. And when you ask those questions, you could see that they haven't yet thought through it. So that was one thing that definitely didn't go to plan, is that I've got now a Barcelona development center that's cranking out a ton of technology, which I thought would not have to be my problem. But
how about you? And not just with the acquisition of Harrods, just throughout your entrepreneurial journey when you started Tandem, what doesn't work in general?
What doesn't work? Well, the first thing is I actually started Tandem in Bali, and I discovered, and I can tell you for sure, that trying to work and start a startup in tropical paradise doesn't work. You try and work, but then there's a swimming pool, and there's the cocktails, and there's your kids, and it's really fucking hard. Don't bother. Take the fucking time out, and then come back and start the company. No, I did get a bit of work done. I went to the office every day. I paid it lip service, but yeah, I had to rewrite my entire business plan when I got back to London and looked at it in the clean light of day. At 15 degrees as opposed to 43. It needed rewriting. So yeah. Random.
Really good advice, because that is the dream, I think. Everybody wants to go to Bali and start a business. Well, not everybody, but I know I do. Maybe then I'll just take the holiday instead.
Yeah, exactly. Take a long holiday. It's fine.
5 minutes. We still have quite a long time, and no questions from the audience. So I'll continue with the questions. So the people within Tandem, how do you ensure that you recruit the right people that are willing to disrupt themselves? We've talked a lot about talent in the different breakout sessions. So both of you, let's just go there for a little bit. Talk about talent and how you find the right people.
Yeah, super important. I mean, probably the most important asset that you have as a startup is being able to set a culture. I have, actually it's probably a mini example of a pivot, but when in one of my, I've built about 6 businesses. Probably still the largest of them is something called Small Financial Services, which is a remittance player. It's like the 5th biggest remittance player. It's got an online presence, but offline stores around Europe and the States, thousands of employees. And we bought a business, so I've done some business buying before in Spain, and had terrible sales per store, really terrible customer service. And I hired, I brought my branch guy across from Portugal to say, how do I fix this? Sorry, this is a long story. But, and he said, there's only one answer. You fire everybody in the branch network. And I said, oof, that's quite punchy. It's an awful lot of people. It's going to cost us, €1 million. Is it, you sure that's the only answer? He's like, well, look, they're all Spanish. They're aged, 50 to 65. They look at every immigrant that walks in the thing to send money home. That's what the business did, and with disdain, and generally give them a really shit customer experience. I'm going to fire them all. I'm going to replace them with 21-year-old Dominicans, and then it's going to be great. And I ummed and ahed for a rather long time. Eventually consented, and our same-store sales were up 3x in about a year and a half after that move. The reason, but you're not here to talk about stores, the reason I mention that is because changing culture, and culture is fundamentally, when you come down and you have all these arguments about, hey, do you guys have a patent on this? When I started venture capital 15 years ago, people were investing in patents. And when it comes down to people go, so why can't Barclays just do what you're doing? The answer, at the end of the day, the root of all these things is always culture. And so your opportunity to hire the right people is probably the most precious thing you have as a startup. And you have to, nail your colors to the mast and be really clear on what culture you're creating and what impacts you want that to have. So in the case of Tandem, and actually, to be fair, I think we're like the 2 sort of probably most ethical FinTechs here up on the stage, if I say so myself.
But you're the only FinTechs on stage.
Sorry. Good point. Really good point. Anyway, I'll in that case, it's less big myself up. No, but I think we start from an ethos which is actually combining purpose and profit on a parallel. We talk about customer lifetime benefit as well as customer lifetime value, something Jaidev knows a thing or two about. So net present value of future cash flows from a customer, something Capital One was really founded on, which is where Jaidev was before. And my business partner Matt Cooper was one of the founders of Capital One. So we sort of bring some of that. But the point is that we hire people who kind of want to save the world. And in order to get into Tandem, you have to kind of want to save the world in some little way. And that is expressed in different ways in your engineers, who generally, don't, walk in carrying banners with slogans or anything else, but, want to build something beautiful that changes lives. And so we focus on that. We have a pretty rigorous sort of 4-stage hiring process. It's differentiated depending which department you're coming into. There is a lot of use of objective testing. We actually use some of the Cap 1 methodology, which is all around case study interviews. So yeah, don't apply for a job. It's a pain in the ass. No, but actually, and then everybody in the entire company has an interview with me. So you can't get in a Tandem unless you've interviewed with me. And mine is really a motivation, cultural fit interview, and I'm like, do you really want to save the world? And explain to me in a slightly non-cheesy way in 10 minutes why and how you want to do that. So for us, and if you think about differentiation versus the existing banks, it's like banks aren't really the places where people go when I save the world. They're the people who kind of said, well, maybe I'll save the world with all the money I made after I've been banking. But that's not to say there aren't nice people in banking. Alexa's in banking and she's lovely. But there's a preponderance of people who are more excited about the monetary side of rewards than necessarily the sort of higher purpose side of rewards. And that differentiation is always going to drive how Tandem thinks and behaves, and in 20 years' time, hiring will probably be the thing that means that we're bigger than Barclays. No, I mean that drives our competitive differentiation and actually means customers trust us. So, because actually, if you go in to one of our meetings and you go, and you're listening to somebody's proposing something like a price change that, actually negatively impacts the customer or has some affordability issue, you'll find like 4 people getting really heated, going, "No, we can't do that." And I'm like, "Oh, guys, okay, but we do have to make money at some point as a company." But you'll see in every meeting where there's a debate there, the customer is super represented. And I've been trying to persuade my social media lady just to like film some of our internal meetings and like put them out on the internet because I think customers would love it. But she says that's not cool. It's not social media. Ricky, you're too fucking old. But anyway, so I think super important hiring. It's an opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity you have, or once in a business opportunity you have to differentiate yourself completely from what everyone else is doing. Super important.
How many employees do you guys have at Zopa?
We hit 300 last week.
Wow.
Okay.
And yeah.
So then how do you do it? Because is it realistic for you to interview every single employee?
No, I do not.
At some point you're going to have to give that up.
Given that we probably interview about 15 people before we hire someone, that would be a lot of people. So I think I agree with a lot of what Ricky said, and it's about what your purpose is and how do you make sure that you are coming from the right place is very important. But 3 things I would kind of add. One is I think you have to be very, very clear in defining the behaviors you're absolutely not willing to tolerate, and you should be able to fire your best friend and your star performer if they did that. And you have to show consistency and be ruthless about it. That's one. Second, if I have to I always have felt that if I have to trade off between experience versus ability to learn, I would always pick ability to learn, because that's what allows you to come up with new things. That's what allows you to disrupt yourself, is that people who are willing and have shown the capability to learn new things. And so maybe we undervalue experience. The third one is hold a bloody high bar. I always say no benefit of doubt when you're hiring someone. If you have even the tiniest of doubt, the answer is absolutely no. But once they are in, give them all the benefit of doubt, unless they're doing one of those behaviors that you don't want to tolerate, right? So once they're in, they're part of the family. Till then, you hold a bloody high bar. That's what we try to get our interviewers to do, and till now we've been doing a good job of it, I feel.
One last question?
Yes.
Okay. So, building on that, because it's dear to my heart, and I know to several people in the audience, how do you ensure that workforce is diverse, inclusive, whatever you want to call it? You need to make sure that the people that you're working with are from different backgrounds, different genders, different religious beliefs, everything. There's a whole lot of things that fall under that. And it's not enough to just look at gender or ethnicity or geography. So how do you guys, or do you have a pretty diverse workforce, and how do you do it?
Do you want to start?
Yeah. So I think it's a challenge. So you look at the intersection of the 2 things that we want most of, finance and technology. It's not the place where you naturally find diversity, which is why you have to try harder. And the starting point is, again, having a culture that's welcoming, that is supportive, and that understands and appreciates difference in opinion, difference in background, and so on. Without that, you're not going to be able to, even if you attract people, you're not going to be able to retain. The second thing, and I think we've been lucky with, is that I think we've naturally attracted, being in London, I think we've naturally attracted a reasonably diverse workforce. But as I think about the future, I think it's really about where you start looking. And you have to make sure that you're looking at all sorts of places rather than the traditional Oxford, Cambridge, and so on, because that's where you end up with a problem. My previous employer, Capital One, used to do an excellent job of actually pretty much going all over the world and recruiting. They recruited me from India. We recruited a ton of people from Turkey, Israel. We were probably one of the very few employees who used to go to Miami in the US to recruit, because you actually got a very good Hispanic and kind of African American base from there, and you actually got some very good talent because not a lot of top companies actually turned up there. So it's really figuring out how can you find the right places to look. Something we have to do. I think we've been lucky till now, but I think something we have to do. And one of the reasons we picked actually Barcelona as a development center was the one thing we liked about it was just like London, it actually attracts a reasonably diverse kind of workforce, and it's as much a pan-European destination as London is. But
so I think there's two things. One, we do up until the final stage force select. So we force in 50% women into our final in every finalist stage. We're still not 50% women, but we're working on it. We force select more about national background than it is about race. I'm personally believe in race blindness, so this isn't what color is your skin, which is a stupid thing. It's just a thing that exists, and it shouldn't make any difference to how you select. But we do believe that different international backgrounds helps. And then the second thing, which has actually been really bizarre, but the apprentice program. I don't know if anybody's tried that, but it's freaking awesome. And it's basically kids straight out of school who are not going to go to college, and it's £9,000 a year. The rest of their salary is paid by the state, and we have like 4 or 5 amazing members of the team who've come to that apprentice program. It doesn't work for everybody. We've probably hosted 30 apprentices over the course of the last 3.5 years. But one of our best coders is still just hitting 21, and he's he came through the apprentice program. We have our whole IT support desk is now apprentices. Not that that's a very big support desk, 3 people, but there's a whole number of great talent that have sort of actually are sort of fairly iconic in the Tandem world who've come up through that apprentice program, and so I think that's been really important and couldn't be more diverse.
Excellent. Well, with that, I'd like to thank Ricky and Jaidev, and y'all for sitting through it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.